This is Greg Schuringa. Greg is back on. Greg was on maybe two other times already now, Greg. Actually,
Um,
now that I think of it. Or only once?
well, we did one that you didn't record, and
Well,
then we did one you recorded. So if you count that, then it's two. But I've only actually been on and
one
recorded
recording.
one other
Yeah.
time. So
There's a
this
lot
is
of
the second.
technical difficulties
Yeah,
to make
we
this
won't say
happen.
whose end it was on.
Right.
Could be either end. There's opportunity for it, right?
Only one of us records, and I think people can figure out who it is. So we don't need the introduction stuff. That exists already. Greg, what's going on at First CRC Waupun?
I will tell you, but I will first say how much I was off on July 3rd, number of Sundays ago, but came to
Right.
church and you filled the pulpit for us.
That's
And
true.
I'll just say, I want to say how much, and I told you when that Sunday how much we appreciated having you. How much preaching around do you do these days?
It's in my contract that I do 12 a year.
Oh, okay.
They kind of come in bunches though, so it's not
Yeah.
like I do one a month. So Drew will be gone, and I'll do a little 3 week series here. Then I won't preach for 3 months, and then Drew will be gone, and I'll get another 3 or 4 week series. So he'll be on sabbatical in September and October. So I've got September, October, and November back to back to back to back. So I'll get a
Yeah.
lot of preaching in then, but
Yep.
just occasionally, and that's good enough for me.
Yeah. So I will tell you, how about I share what I'm preaching these days?
Great.
Is that okay?
Yeah, love it.
So it's a little series that I started a couple weeks ago, and the plan is to go through Labor Day weekend with it, and it's called Greatest Hits of the Faith.
Hmm.
And what I'm doing is taking highlight lessons from the Heidelberg Catechism,
Cool.
like Lord's Day 1, what is your only comfort in life and in death? Lord's Day 7, what is true faith? This week, I'm up to Lord's Day 10, which is on providence. And that's going to be a two-parter because this week we have communion. So it's going to be a little briefer.
Sure.
And then so it's kind of what I'm titling it is I'm looking at providence I'm titling it, Why the Sovereignty of God Makes Your Life Beautiful. So, especially using that term that I think John Calvin used to summarize who God is and his attributes. I think he used that term, like he thought sovereignty was the best way to summarize that. And a lot of us are familiar in Reformed churches with that term sovereignty. And I think it's just beautiful. So that's what I'm doing. And I love the Catechism, and I'll tell you, this might be interesting to folks. A little bit of background. So I was called to the ministry in my late teens, early 20s, in the context of volunteering in a church plant in Southern California. I especially was involved in worship and in youth. I led the youth small group that was a combination of middle school and high schoolers. And I did stuff with the worship team, and I was sort of on the core group, the launch team or whatever you want to call it. But I really enjoyed that, and I was affirmed in the work I was doing. And that's where I felt called to the ministry in that context, and then went to seminary after that. But in this church plant, kind of unusual, I'm thinking, for a church plant, there were two pastors who both worked full-time, but then they were part-time leading this church. We had in that church plant a morning and evening service on Sundays. And in the evening, the pastor preached on the Heidelberg Bible study series to avoid using, because catechism is even for church people, and we were reaching people who weren't necessarily churched. Sure. And I think I'm using that term a bit too, even in this context, as I'm preaching this series, because that's what it is, right?
How did you put that? Heidelberg Bible study?
The Heidelberg Bible study series.
I like it.
You look at all the footnotes and Bible passages. It just seems a little more accessible. Not that I explain too what it's Heidelberg Catechism, and what that is, like a question and answer of what we believe, and how there's so many of them out there, especially around the time of the Reformation, and how this is one that has stood the test of time. But but I was really convinced, I mean, of the Heidelberg Catechism in this sense, in that church plant. People might think, well, I think it feels to me like sometimes some of our people in the Christian Reformed Church and the Reformed Church almost have gotten a little burned out on the Catechism. And I don't know why that is. I don't know if it hasn't been preached winningly. I don't know. But these people who were new to the faith and just learning the Bible were astounded and amazed, and they loved these Heidelberg Bible study series lessons. And they said stuff like, I can't believe there's like a structure to things. There is like a truth, because you read the Bible, but then it kind of organizes things. Right. And they just thought like, oh, there's a foundation for my life that I didn't know about. And they're kind of, without the Christian faith, kind of, wandering, breezing through life without a real purpose. And they really appreciated, we heard a lot of appreciation for doing the Heidelberg Catechism in the evenings at that church plant. And so, I mean, I've probably always been convinced of the value of it, but even more so in for new Christians, especially maybe for new Christians.
Sure.
So anyway, that's what I'm doing.
Wow.
And I thought, we don't have an evening service now at First anymore. And I thought from time to time to bring that in. Yeah, and I do that sometimes as part of our profession of faith in the morning, because if we just have the morning service, traditionally kind of do the Apostles' Creed in the evening service. But I try to bring some of that on a regular basis to the morning. Yeah. So we don't lose that, both the Apostles' Creed, but also sometimes just whether in sermons or other liturgical ways to bring the Catechism before people. But this is a little more directly than I've done up until now, just doing the Catechism for a number of weeks. So I've been enjoying that. I'm like, yeah. And I'm still trying to figure out what I'm going to do after that. I don't know when we spoke last, what I was doing. I think I was doing Joshua.
Right. Mm-hmm.
But then, so Joshua, and I kind of went through the book. I broke it up sometimes, but then now this will be the second of a little more topical series in a row, because I did the fruit of the Spirit after that. Okay. And then now this, and then probably another book, but I still haven't figured out which after Labor Day.
You'll go through a book of the Bible after this selections from the Catechism.
That's what I plan to do. I try to not do it like tons of weeks in a row, even if it's up to, I don't know, 15 to 20 sermons, but I feel like that's a lot at once for people.
Yeah.
So if it turns out decently long, I try to break it up. Yeah, you know what I mean?
I was going to ask about that in terms of the Catechism, because we've done some stuff with the creeds and confessions in the evening services, which is traditional to the CRC.
Right.
But we've found too that those series just get so long. I mean, 52 Lord's Days. Where do you start and stop? You go through that. It was meant. For that to be every week, and then you even the Belgic Confession was 36 weeks, and it just gets so long for people. And so I was interested, how you came about the idea to break it up, and how you're choosing which Lord's Days to focus on.
Yeah, so this is like a 7 or 8 sermon series, so I'm not breaking it up. So it's not super long, and like this past Sunday, it was broken up already because we had a guest pastor. But then it'll be then 5 more. I think it's just 7 maybe. So I just have 5 in a row to the end starting this Sunday. But with I do think it's important to break stuff up sometimes. I've seen pastors do different things with that. Like, there are some pastors who just preach through in grave detail books of the Bible.
Sure.
But then I've seen that break up, okay, let's stop and do a 4-week series on, human sexuality, because that comes out of the text, or different a topical thing to break it up, a book of the Bible. I've seen that happen. And with the Catechism, I think it'd be a lot to do 52 in a row, or the Belgic Confession, and just to do something else, like, or a small book of the Bible in between. What I have in mind is, I don't remember off the top of my head all the Lord's Days that I'm kind of doing and all the lessons, but I do have in mind one way to do the Catechism. The Catechism is right. It's the Apostles' Creed, 10 Commandments, and the Lord's Prayer.
Yep.
So you can do them, and then there's the keys of the kingdom. There's a section there, with the sacraments, preaching, and discipline. Right. But you could do little series on those, and that's what I might do. And like, have the Catechism inform a series on the Lord's Prayer kind of thing. Yeah. Anyway,
that's how I use the Belgic Confession so my middle school youth group I get for 3 years, and I try to touch on one of the confessional documents each year. And so it's not a catechism class, but 1 year I'll use the Catechism to talk about guilt, or I'll use the Belgic Confession to talk about church governance, or I'll use, Canons of Dort kind of is what it is. It's hard to totally zero in from there, but the same kind of idea. Just zero in on one of the topics or themes, and kind of use that document as my, main source after Scripture. It's a cool way to do it.
That's great.
And so after this, you're back in the book of the Bible, Joshua in particular, or that one's all wrapped up?
No, that's all wrapped up. I'm not sure what I'm going to do next. I got to figure that out in the next weeks, though.
Fun.
Ephesians is an idea.
Well, it's cool. Yeah. Anyway, we can be praying for you or your family or First Waupun?
Well, certainly, when I think of my family, first of all, I have with Bethel CRC and First CRC, our youth groups are joint together. And this week, the youth group, including my 15-year-old daughter, is in Cary, Mississippi on a service project. So we're praying certainly for safety, but also that God can use them, that they can serve people in need, and that they can grow closer together and go closer in their walk with God. And, I'm praying that in particular for my daughter, Sophia. I'm very thankful for my older daughter, Olivia, who married Isaac Dykema in the middle of June. And it's just such a joy to see that. Yeah. And, we have a new council, maybe like most churches, a few new elders and a couple new deacons just starting out, so that we have a really good start to this term for these guys in our case. Yeah.
Yeah. I never knew that, until Tim Koyman's, prayer document, like all the churches have been putting on their list, pray for our new elders and deacons. And I never realized growing up that like everybody in the classes was kind of on the same cycle, and maybe that's like denomination wide, like kind of prescribed in church order. I don't know, but kind of learned that thanks to Pastor Tim's efforts.
Oh yeah. So my previous church here at First, the term started on July 1st, and we'll have congregational meeting in June to elect new elders and deacons. In my previous church, it started June 1st. So the congregational meeting was in May.
Right.
And I'm guessing some people might, I don't know, churches I think are almost sometimes changing their fiscal year to the calendar year.
That's
instead of, but you still do elder deacon elections.
Yeah, May, June, I think, if I'm remembering correctly. We just did ours, I think.
Because some churches in shifting to a calendar year financially also shift to elder deacon elections, so that aligns. So that starts in January. Maybe one of the challenges with that is December's kind of busy. Advent and Christmas season and the congregational meeting, but that's what some churches do too. Neat. But most that I know, I've seen that mostly in the summer.
Well, appreciate your time today, and you thanked me for coming, but I also want to thank First Waupun because, and I mentioned this I think in the service, I had been told by your students at Camp Calvin that one of the things they loved about your church at First Waupun was that you sang really well. And I was not disappointed. First Waupun is like the bar for congregational singing, in my opinion.
So that's what they told me when I was in the search process, which wasn't that long ago. I've just been here a year yet. And they said, yeah, our church really sings.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh. And then when I was in the first service I attended, I'm like, oh,
they're not
you
kidding.
really mean it.
Because everybody says that. Like, oh, yeah, one of the things we're good at is singing. But First Waupun is really good at singing.
Yeah, it seems to be
It's
known
awesome.
for that. And even the pastor who preached last Sunday made mention of it.
It's awesome.
And it's yeah, I mean it's just wonderful to be able to, in the context of everybody else singing loud, you can sing out as much as, and there's a sort of to me, certainly a spiritual vibrancy to just singing our hearts out, So it's something I'm really feel grateful about to be pastor at First CRC, that they have that history.